Add.
And we're back. You're listening to the Exitology Unlock Your Profits, Unlock Your Potential show on the International Business Growth Radio Network. And I am Jason Wally Waldron, your host for today's show. And we are here joined with Patty Lawrence, CMA, consulting CFO, and founder of Turbo Execs. And we have been talking about business, objectivity, profits, managing your numbers, and stories that go along with that. And Patty, over on the break, we were sharing some stories about the concept of easy, lucrative, fun business. And I was wondering if maybe you could walk us through, I'm sure you have a recent client story where they probably were the opposite of that, maybe a hard cash flow disaster sucking, not fun business. And then, they get a hold of their numbers and they start to figure out their profit margins, maybe even grow those profit margins by up to 15%. And now they have their life back and they have an easy, lucrative, fun business. So what does it look like to go through that transition?
I love that. I like to focus on, the L factor, the lucrative portion of that.
Sure.
That's all about the profits, right? It's all about profits, all about cash. And I can tell you a story about a client that came to us. They were in the solar industry.
Okay.
And when they were faced with books that were basically a hot mess and payroll, they didn't know if they were going to meet payroll. So they were essentially kind of flying blind with their books being kind of a hot mess.
Yeah.
But they were really determined to grow and be profitable because they knew they had something, right? They had a business model. They had kind of some IP along with it on their business methods and things like that. So in spite of the controller being in over his head, and them not getting the data that they needed, they kind of turned to us and said, what can we do? Right.
Yeah.
But really, after working with us, we figured out that their main issue was cash. And it was in 3 areas. It was commissions, inventory, and deposits, customer deposits. And over the next 3 years, by fixing these things, these 3 areas, we improved their cash by $1 million in 30 days.
And hold on for a second. So so you've got a rapidly growing solar company, and there's a lot of these out here right now, right? It's been a land grab, Wild West situation. I think we've probably gotten the pioneers. They've all been now shot in the back by Indians, and the next wave is starting to arrive into the solar industry. But there's a lot of rapid growth opportunities out there. There's a lot of consolidation that'll take place over the next 3 to 5 years. So I want to call that out, first of all, because the importance of that is the folks who will be consolidated, which is a fancy way of saying the owners who put all the risk up will massively exit and have a lucrative situation for themselves. Those right now, because it's growing so fast, you said inventory, and you said they're having trouble with payroll. You said, what was the one thing that put them in enough pain to call you?
So it was not meeting payroll. It was not, it was getting so close, so uncomfortably close to not meeting payroll.
Yeah.
And that's when we had to, because that's cash, right? That's right. So what we did was we looked at 3 areas of that were trouble spots that we identified as trouble spots. And the first one was commissions. They would pay their commissions because they love to pay them quickly. But they were paying them too quickly. They were paying them ahead of actually getting paid for the jobs.
Oh, okay.
So that's number one problem. The second piece was inventory. So as they grew, over time, they were investing more and more in the panels and the inverters and all of that stuff.
Yep.
And that's high ticket stuff. So what the problem with that is they were not leveraging their purchasing power, which you can relate to with your folks, right?
Yeah.
With your
Yeah.
clients. They're not leveraging the fact that they were once a very small fish in the pond. Now they're big fish in the pond, right?
Right.
And they need to act like it. So let's go back and renegotiate some terms on the inventory purchases. So that's number 2. The third area was customer deposits. What we were finding is their customer deposits weren't covering that initial outlay for the materials purchases, even though we had some cash timing and so forth, but it wasn't covering enough. So making tweaks in all 3 of those areas enabled them to right the ship in terms of the cash situation and not have the issues that they were having, the pain that they were having going, oh my God, we're not going to make payroll. And in fact, they grew when we started working with them from 2 million in year 1 to 12 million to the next year, 25 million. And that next year, exited in a private equity roll up of the industry. So just as you had mentioned, right, over the course of that time, the land grab, right? Private equity's out there on the sidelines going, hey, look at this. We want some of that action.
I am so that is so let me just make a comment real quick here, because that's a great example of what is out there. And whether it's solar panel specific, really everybody. So strategically speaking here, the United States is in the middle of what's called the reshoring initiative. And so that's a short version of saying that a lot of stuff is going to get made here over the next 25 years. And finally, there's a lot of things being put in place around there. So no matter what industry you're in, though, I want everybody who's listening to this to hear this loud and clear. If you don't take that first step and get those initial numbers in place, you don't even have a chance for that promised land. And so these unsolicited offers only come towards businesses who have done the work beforehand. Is that fair, Patty?
It's very fair. And to really drive home that point, remember I started with their books were a mess. Their books were a mess, which we helped fix, right? We helped clean all of that process up so that they could really see where they were going, right? So the numbers reveal the story of what's happening in the business. That's the key. And they must do that because private equity won't pay you for junk numbers and junk reports.
Right.
There's no value to them in that because they can't see the real value of the company.
That's a really good point that you make there, is that step 1 was the books were a mess, get them unmessed. And I think it's important for people to think about this in a multifaceted situation, because step 1 is essentially unmessing your books. Why? So that you can be in control of your books. Why? So that you can start to manage ahead of that power curve and truly build that business on the growth side of things, as we saw there. I mean, 2 to 12 and then 12 to 25 million growth trajectory. This is not your average bear, right? This is certainly a best-in-class growth trajectory. And none of that happens if you don't have that first cornerstone of your books in place. But also, I don't know if a lot of people, because they're too caught in the business, we see this all the time. I don't know if they understand the importance of what's going to happen if somebody is going to consider to pick up your business. The first thing they are going to do, to your point, is look at the numbers. And then the second thing they're going to do is then rejigger the numbers in their understanding of what it looks like. And it's always against your favor. Just because, right? If you're an outside investor, step 1 is, here's what the numbers show me. Step 2 is, how do I need to make this look so that I can make this an investable asset? And so if you don't even have the first thing in place, you're done. But also, if you have a good story, you have options available to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to your point, where the investor is rejiggering the numbers,
Mm-hmm.
they're also testing the fit for them,
Totally.
right? They're bringing in some numbers and going, okay, we have this existing either financial model
Mm-hmm.
or structure, or maybe they have another company that they want to pull this into. Maybe it's, some kind of an integration or
Right.
whatever it is, right? So they're looking at that, and they need to make sure that it fits, the puzzle piece
Right.
fits where they have an available opening.
So I've never heard this story before from TurboZex, and now I'm very intrigued. So you have a company that you come in, the first year you essentially get them cleaned up and get them ahead of the power curve, if you will. That's what my CPA used to always say. An old gentleman, and he said, "You're either ahead of the power curve or below, behind the power curve. And step one is to get ahead of the power curve." So, and what does that mean? Cash flow, right? It's like a surfer, right? If you're ahead of that wave and in the sweet spot, then you're surfing all the way in. So, step two, though, then you get them on this growth trajectory. TurboExec's big promise is to show the story behind the numbers. So, as this company went to market and eventually exited to a financial private equity buyer, what role did TurboExecs play in telling that story to all parties involved?
Yeah, love that question. We were able to, I call it, be the lead dog
Okay.
their company was the lead in the portfolio, in the building of that portfolio under private equity. So they were kind of the biggest company, the biggest acquisition that they were going to pull in.
Okay.
So we were kind of looking to us and Turbo Execs, I should say, the company as well as Turbo Execs,
Yeah.
to respond to all of the due diligence requests.
Right.
And the great part is my team and I have experience on that. We have
Right.
buy side and sell side experience for due diligence, right?
Right.
Asking the questions or responding to the questions, both of those.
Yep.
So what we want to make sure is that we are driving home the value for the client, answering those questions properly and setting them up for success.
Yeah, that's awesome. Patty, thanks for sharing all of those stories. We're going to take a short break here. Folks, you can always go to exitology.com, click Contact Us, ask us a question, and we will answer it on an upcoming episode. You're listening to Exitology, Unlock Your Profits, Unlock Your Potential on the International Business Growth Radio Network.